All right, welcome everybody back to the Big Douglas Show. Glad to welcome back AJ Perez from Front Office Sports. AJ, thanks for dropping by for a couple minutes today.
No problem.
Back in the news are the Commanders with the sale. We'll get to that in a minute because that's what we're here to talk about. But you had an interesting article on Dana White. I was curious a little bit about what you found. And to your general point, that not much has been made about it. It seems surprising because so much of the time this is cancel time, right?
Yeah, I know. And it was basically I started going on that story that ran Sunday. It's when I learned about more than 2 weeks ago that he wasn't going to face really any consequences. So I covered it like I would cover anything else. And if any other sports commissioner, you could pick one, was kind of caught on camera doing the same thing, I don't think we would have the same reaction. And I kind of detail why that is. A lot of it is, they're Endeavor, thinks very highly of Dana White. It's easily Endeavor's most valuable property. And then there's other things. The MMA media is not the most ferocious. They don't have, and that's part of it. Part of it's not all on them because there's credentials have been pulled from reporters for accurate, but accurate stories that don't paint the UFC in the best light or Dana White in the best light. There's been and so there's and also ESPN being a partner, and they covered it not nearly as much as they would have covered any other commissioner doing the same. So that was kind of how I approached it. And I covered UFC when I worked at Fox, so I had fortunately had a lot of sources. It's been a while, but yeah, it's I was able to reach out to these dozens of people, and I got a lot of them to at least talk anonymously. I tried to get them on the record, but yeah, it took a couple weeks to report that one out.
News came out this morning that the Angels are off the market to be sold. Which teams, other than the Commanders, are due up for sale that we know of at this point?
The Nats are still kind of hanging out there.
Does that have to do with TV deals? What is the holdup on?
Yeah, the holdup there is and the Orioles have kind of been for sale. The Angelos family, obviously, the infighting there has held that up. But it is part of that lawsuit. Masson is over Masson. That's hundreds of millions of dollars that the Nats are likely going to be owed. And my sources have told me months ago that the Orioles have set money aside in that case. That's why Ted Leonsis was one of the top candidates. The theory being, instead of the Orioles paying out millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, however it's going to be to the Nats, that there'd be some kind of settlement worked out where the Nats would end up on going to be the rebranded NBC Sports Washington, which will be monumental. So on the RSN there. Yeah, there's basically like the Nats, the Angels don't own their own ballpark. It ended up being a part of a kind of a federal investigation actually over him trying to acquire that land. And build a new stadium there. Artie Moreno, he was not implicated. I think he was not a target of that investigation as far as we know. And 5 months to the day of him putting the team on the market, he's pulled it off. That's a lot of it because I know there's a lot of worries there because of the Commanders sale, but there's some differences. Artie doesn't face the backlash he does. He's not facing any backlash near as much as Snyder. The biggest backlash for Artie is kind of like with Snyder when it comes to the fans, and despite having Trout and everybody else on that roster not winning, I think that's that's part of it. The teams that don't own their own stadiums, even the Commanders who have to build a new stadium, at least they have that land. They have the land there. They land in Ashburn. They have real estate assets. When you sell a franchise without a team-owned stadium, that really depresses the value.
The other teams that I hear about are the Seahawks and the Chargers. Do you think they'll become available? When will they become available? And where, if we're ranking the three NFL franchises and kind of the prestige level, maybe not just the money, but where they rank, how do you think that potential owners see those three franchises?
I think the Chargers are the least likely to be sold of those three. The Seattle Seahawks have been rumored for a while. That's that could be that's Bezos's actual home. So it's while he has links here in the DC area, obviously he goes back much further, found in Amazon in Seattle, and with their huge headquarters out there already. It's so that's one prospect. Yeah, that's probably the consensus most likely next franchise to go on the market. But I think I think that's going to be the NFL doesn't like, at least the NFL overall doesn't like these teams come on the market so often. Usually it's several years between them, so I don't think it's going to be immediate. There's Joan Allen who runs the trust for her late brother Paul Allen. She's not the most accessible owner. She's at the owner meetings a lot, but not. I've never been able to talk to her. So there's really it's hard to gauge. But she leaves the football people to make those decisions, and the team hadn't made the playoffs this year, so kind of unexpectedly after losing Wilson. So I think the Seahawks would be the next team.
Okay, let's get to the Commanders. News came out that it's interesting. News or not, the New York Post reported that Bezos was thinking about selling the Post. I think we've had conflicting reports on that at this point. What are you hearing about that? And what are you actually hearing about Bezos? Because to my knowledge, he hasn't actually made a bid on the team yet.
I don't know what happened to Jay-Z. It's like I've been asking that. I'm like, when this story came out in November, or when the NFL, or sorry, when Dan Snyder and the team said they're exploring their options in November, we heard all these names. I think and Bezos being one, but we heard Byron Allen, Jay-Z, Matthew McConaughey, RG3 mentioning being part of ownership either in a principal or a minority role. But it's all shaken out. It's kind of like the usual names. You have a lot of the same names from the Broncos sale. And with Bezos being probably a little more the front runner on this one, because given his, there is an interest there. It's kind of hard to spell out. I've heard from people why he's interested. But I don't have that nailed down. But there is interest there, and I just don't. I reported last week that he didn't want to come in early with the bid to set the market and create a bid against himself. He's still in the running. There's reports that Snyder will never sell to him. I think if he has an offer that's well above the others, I think you can't rule that out. But we go from him basically haven't never on the record publicly said that he wants to buy the team to I'll sell the Washington Post to buy the team to placate. I guess it's the Dan Snyder. I don't see what the advantages of that is. It's like, because, if he owns the team, if he wants the team, and Snyder forcing him to sell the Washington Post to who will report, I just don't understand. It's possible. I mean, I'm not going to totally doubt it. I don't know the sources for the story. Lots of denials, but why would Snyder care if who owns the Washington Post if he's not going to be maybe even living in the DC area after it's sold?
Who do you think of those that have put in offers? Where do you kind of rank some of the potential candidates for ownership?
Yeah, it's kind of, we don't even know all the names, but I would say I think even though the Blitzer Harris group who own the Devils and the Sixers, I think that's one of the that name's been floated out there a lot. I think that's and I think there's interest. They also kicked the tires over with the Broncos. They didn't want to get into a bidding war there, so they obviously could have outbid anybody pretty much outside of Bezos and maybe Elon Musk if they wanted it. So I think that's probably that's the name I hear. I know JP Finley reported that Foley's out last week, there's the also the Clear Lake Capital. The PE fund, the two guys who actually tried to buy the 40% stake in the Commanders a couple of years ago. Yeah, they're out there. We don't know about John Henry, who owns the Red Sox and other teams. So it's gonna be interesting. I think we're gonna know in the next couple of weeks where this is headed. But it's been pretty quiet since kind of what we reported last week.
Yeah, it's odd. There really hasn't been a whole lot of discussion, even since the news dropped of, hiring Bank of America to look through this stuff. Do you still think, I know last time I talked to you, the kind of the owners meeting is when I think people thought this would get wrapped up. Do you still kind of feel that same way that we'll have something definitive to vote on by the owners meeting?
I don't know if we'll have a vote by the end of March, middle to end of March when those meetings are. But we likely will know where it's headed and who that principal owner is going to be. That's we which it'd be pretty. I'm not saying it's a lock by any means. These things could take time. There's obviously Snyder could always pull out and keep the team, so I don't think that's likely, but it's still an option. And so we'll have a decent idea. I don't know if it'll be done, because it has to go to the finance committee, who will do kind of like a little not really investigation, but they'll put together a report and recommendation, which the other NFL owners don't really have to abide by, but it does have some sway. From there, from the finance committee goes to the 24 votes, and as we saw in August, that was a special meeting called in Minnesota to approve Walton for the Broncos. So it could be one of those situations where they're going to have to come back between the owners' meetings for a special meeting to approve the next owner.
The Commanders fans, when they hear that Dan may want to keep some portion of the team, get very nervous. I've heard that he'd like to keep a small piece maybe to pass on to his son. Have you heard that? And can you give the fans enough to relaxation that little piece doesn't really do anything for him, and that's just to I don't think that would dissuade your owner from buying the team, would it? Like a potential new owner.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been some chatter. There's really nothing definitive that I've heard that what percentage, or even if he wants to keep a small piece, but if he keeps like 5 or 10%, he has to sell at least 51% of the team, since he pretty much owns all of it. The next owner has to be a controlling owner, needs to have the majority of the team. And so that's going to be the tricky part there. But I think it's most likely going to be a full sale or almost a full sale. And once Dan Snyder is in a minority role, he'll have no say in anything. Also, that value, if the team sells for $6.5 billion or how much it goes for, while if he keeps 10%, let's say, that 10% is not really worth $650 million. It's really, it's worth about half that, because you really can't do much with it until the next time the team sells. So if he does keep that, and this is what we saw when the debt waiver almost 2 years ago now, when the debt waiver was approved, Dan Snyder took on some debt to buy out the three co-owners. They paid $850 million, $900 million for 40%. So you can see how pennies on the dollar, not quite pennies, but a little more than that. But that you don't get full value as a part owner. You also really don't have any control. Your name's just basically on some part of the stadium. I know it's probably not the most popular part of the stadium where that name is. But it's so it's not. I wouldn't don't if he keeps 5% to hand down to his son or another family member. I don't think it's not the end of the world.
As we sit here on January the 24th, what do you think that the team eventually sells for? Because the number that's floating around, this 6.5 or 7 billion, is it's so much bigger than what the Broncos sold for.
Yeah.
But I think that's because the DC market is a top market, and people want to be in business. I think they can see where this thing could be headed. What do you think the number ends up looking like?
I think when I said 6.5, I reported about 8-9 days ago about it being at the first round bids being at 6.3 billion, but that's only the first round. It'll probably go up a little bit. So I think the 6.5 to 7 range is doable. But you've got to look at it this way. You have to worry about the stadium. That's going to cost at least $3 billion, if not closer to $4 billion. You do have Atlanta and Ashburn, and in obviously around FedEx right now. Those are also assets. But it's like, it's the next step. It's the lobbying part. It's the stuff that's not the brick and mortar. cost of a stadium. It's getting, figuring out where to put it and the lobbying that it'll take to do it, because even to get any kind of public money, and I think no matter how rich if these billionaires are, as we've seen with from the Raiders to the Titans to the Bills, hundreds of millions of dollars of public financing. Bills pretty much all publicly financed. So that's that's what the NFL owners don't want, so that public finance Kirby train to be turned over. And it's kind of that's one of the reasons why it's not the main reason by any means that Snyder kind of fell out of favor, but his inability to get really anything going on the stadium front was part of the frustrations by the other NFL owners.
And it sounds like maybe the Commanders will be back in getting some of that public funding with a change of ownership. At least that's the hope.
Yeah, it is. There are paths forward a little more straightforward in Maryland and Virginia, especially Virginia for that. DC is harder because right now there's really no way there's basically guidelines, laws that you can't really publicly finance any new stadiums there. And obviously with the RFK site being pretty much the only place in DC to put it, that land has to be transferred from the National Park Service to the city, and the city's going to probably want low income housing and other things to go in that site beyond a stadium. So there'd have some kind of maybe offsets of building housing elsewhere in DC. I think RFK is more likely in play with the next owner of the team, if there is one, than it is now. And I think there's a lot of people who, like you said, you're buying a franchise that historically one of the original NFL franchises, one of the first six or eight NFL franchises, great history. And you're buying it's kind of a fixer upper, even though it's going to be a $6.5 billion fixer upper, because a lot of the stuff that the team not winning is being a large part of it. Obviously, the media scrutiny, the scandals under Snyder, and everything else. I think a lot of fans will be quick to move past all that and to support the team again. There was a little uptick in ticket sales this year, but you're looking at a stadium now that's 18 to 20,000 seats smaller than when Dan Snyder bought the team. So 1999. So there's a long way to go, but I think a change of ownership, would go a long way to reestablishing what a force it was. You're not going to have just Eagles fans or mostly Eagles fans and Cowboys fans when you go to FedEx. I think there's a lot of fans lying in wait, who've been waiting for a new owner to take over.
AJ, you're the best. We appreciate it, and we'll get back up with you as we get closer to the owners' meetings.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, man.
No problem. All right, man. I'll see you later.
Appreciate you.